Welcome, everyone. Good to have you with us. This is our Android Week with Alan Firstenberg in New York, Bruce Turner in Lynchburg, Virginia, Duke Carrico in Kingsport, Tennessee, Michael Banks in Augusta, Georgia, Nate Swanner in Portland, Oregon. This is our Android Week. Welcome. Lots to talk about. So many things have happened, and we're going to hit all that stuff. We've got, we start with hardware, and then software.
And then software, and then we'll have a conversation.
Absolutely. Some of the stuff we're going to be discussing, the T-Mobile sale, this Samsung and Google are best buds now, and
of course the sale of Motorola to Lenovo. Talking about sales.
Absolutely. It's like Black Friday.
So let's get to it.
Okay, so first up, there was a new phone, a new color of the Nexus 5. You can get it in red now, so it's black, white, and red. And it's kind of snazzy looking. It's not gold, like Craig Ship's iPhone. But I guess they study these things, and I kind of just like, I always had a gray or black phone, and then I got the white Note 2 just because I was sick of gray and black. And then now I wouldn't mind getting a black phone again, or a gray phone, or I don't know about red. What do you think? Would you buy a red phone?
No, but then again, I keep my phone in my pocket most of the time. Then again, you're also talking to the guy that bought a blue Google Glass, so it would stand out better. So, I don't know. Hey, if they had a blue phone that matched my glass, I might go for it. But in general, I don't care.
Okay, so you sound pretty firm. So anyway, you can get a red, and apparently they've got that in stock. Some of the 30, I think if you're paying more, you get the 64 gigabyte of the black and the white. They might be a little bit delayed. But I think right away you can get the red one. So if you want it, hop on it. And there you go. Okay, next is a review of the Nexus 5. Because it's been out for, 3 months now. And the review we're discussing here, this is just one guy's opinion. It's on Forbes. But he's been using it for 3 months. And he says there are compromises. But he says he thinks it's the best all-around option for Android. If you factor everything in there. It's not the best built. It's not the biggest screen. It's not the leader in any category except overall, all things considered, he thinks it's the best option. What do you think?
Well, I think as we've always talked about, Android phones, particularly Nexus phones, yeah, they're out to show what can be done, but they're also out to show what can be done at a reasonable price. And I think it strikes the right balance between price and performance, and all of that fun stuff that people really care about. They know that they're not going to be able to sell a phone at an iPhone price, and they're not going to try. They've got to earn people's trust first, and this is part of that part of earning that trust.
Okay. It's nice. I mean, just like the Nexus 5, it's not the best built tablet out there, or the Nexus 7, but I love it, and it's, the price is good. It's a good compromise. You get Android quicker than any other way with either of these devices. So definitely one to look at if you're going to consider getting an Android phone.
Yeah, without a doubt. If you're not looking at the 5, then you're not really looking. It may not be the right one for you. There are plenty of other good phones out there, but you need it bears looking at, without a doubt.
Okay, so next is AllCast now works with Chromecast again, and you can stream local media from Android to a television set.
This is an important story, but it kind of misses out on what the real story here is. And we'll be covering this in more detail on Friday on our show, Google Plus Week. But the real story here is that the Chromecast API is now public for anybody. So the guy who is behind the AllCast spent essentially 20 minutes adapting AllCast so that it's now fully functional, just like it was supposed to be. So once again, you can stream stuff directly from your phone to your Chromecast. Handles a wide variety of media formats. Really awesome.
Refresh my memory. I don't have AllCast. What is it?
I don't have AllCast either, but now that I may actually consider buying it now. One of the things that it does, one of the things that Chromecast does, is lets you stream media from a network source. My understanding is that AllCast lets you stream media that you may be storing on your phone directly to the Chromecast without having to go through a server. And it streams a lot more media types than than YouTube. You can send photos to it. You can send video that you've taken on your phone. You can send it straight to your Chromecast.
So this is not a physical thing. It's an app.
It's an app, yes.
Okay, so I'm looking here. I see there's a free version, and then but it has a limit, right? So like you could only share a minute of something.
So yeah, I haven't tried it yet, but we'll be taking a look, and this will probably be more featured next week on one of our apps of the week.
So the difference here, in a nutshell, is AllCast lets you stream media that's on your device, whereas
Correct.
the Chromecast app lets you stream like from Netflix or from the internet to
Right,
Chromecast.
correct. You can think of this sort of like tab casting instead of you don't need a Chrome tab to contain your media.
Okay. All right, cool. Another reason for Craig to dust off his Chromecast.
I'll believe that when I see it.
Indeed. Okay, so speaking of dongles, as we often do on the program, Dell has a new HDMI dongle. It's not cheap. It's $130. And this is interesting, though, I think. It's lets you create. You want to explain this better than I can, basically?
I was wondering how far you were going to try to explain it before you realized you had no clue what it did.
No, it creates an Android, full Android experience on your television or on whatever HDMI monitor.
The deal here is this is basically taking a swipe at a Chromebook. So basically what it lets you do is it lets you carry around a remote connection to your office in this dongle, this slightly oversized dongle. You plug it into an HDMI port on a TV. You use a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse if you want, and you now have an Android device that has the ability to connect to the network. And once you do that, it gives you a very easy way to connect back to your home office if that's what you need, or run apps like you were running them on a phone or a tablet, except you now have something that's more like what you get from a desktop or a laptop.
It's kind of like PC Anywhere meets Chromecast. It meets...
Yeah, kind of.
Because it's not just Android. I mean, that's why it's in the program, but it also, you run a program on your local computer. I guess it's Windows or Mac. I don't know. I know it's Windows.
My quick read of it indicated that it was an Android. The unit itself is Android, but there are apps that you'll be able to run on it that let you connect back to your PC in the office, or whatever else might be on this thing that you're carrying around.
And works with a wireless keyboard or mouse.
Correct.
So it is a laptop and a tablet in your pocket, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
So they're thinking this is enterprise, which means they're not probably expecting to move as many as they would with a consumer product, and it's a little pricey. But for what it does, for someone like Bruce, I think it's a fantastic product. Someone who travels a lot for business.
This is Dell we're talking here, so all they think is enterprise these days. But yeah, absolutely. This is definitely them saying, hey, this is the quick way to create a remote, a remote PC. You just go to any place that's got an HDMI port, and poof, you've got instant remote computer without having to lug around your heavy Chromebook.
And I guess Chromecast apparently doesn't work in some hotels, or it doesn't work if you... Why doesn't it work in hotels? Because it can't... You can put a password in, can't you?
because most hotels, well, um, yeah, I don't know why it wouldn't work in most hotels. The only reason I could guess it wouldn't work in most hotels is they don't let you connect to their TV. But that's a guess.
Oh,
I
there's no
haven't heard people
HDMI, you
having
mean?
problems with the
Okay.
Chromecast in a hotel. And that's not what this is. Let's be clear. The Chromecast is good for displaying media. This is a much more all-around solution. This is really meant so that you can connect back to another machine and control that machine. Different purposes. They may look similar because we've got dongles on both, but fundamentally they're different. They're different things.
I still think if I have one television in here, it's 32-inch, and it's connected as an extended desktop monitor for my computer. So if you're in that situation, you really don't need the Chromecast. The Chromecast doesn't do anything that I can't do by simply dragging a window over and watching it. Now, that said, if I had a television in my living room, right, on the wall that wasn't connected, wasn't a smart TV, and like you've said, the built-in apps on a smart TV suck. But if it wasn't connected, if it was just a dumb TV that had HDMI, then a Chromecast would be something I'd use all the time on that device. So it's all depends on
the biggest
if you can
thing,
use it.
The biggest thing that even you might get a use out of on the 32-inch there is right now, in order to control it, you need to have the keyboard. You need to have your keyboard, which is on your desk presumably, or your mouse or whatever, to control it. Whereas, 32 inches isn't too shabby. You could sit halfway across the room. So if you're working, you want to be up close. If you're watching something, you may want to sit back and relax in a much more comfortable chair on the other side of the room. And for that, you might want to use your cell phone instead of having to use the computer to control it.
Okay. And one comment here from John. He notes that the big creation evolution debate with Bill Nye is going on.
It should be wrapping up soon, actually.
Yeah, so we're going to get a bunch
I tried to
of
watch it earlier and it crashed on me, so I figured I'd tune in later and watch the recap.
We'll get a bunch of fired up Christians and atheists watching and just really mad. I'm going to watch it after myself because I'm really curious to see, because I think they're both really, really good at presenting their viewpoints. So we'll see. I think both of these guys do this all the time. Okay, so next up, I'm not a big gamer, which I wrote one game, and I used to be a gamer when I was, young male. Sadly, I'm no longer a young male like Alan, who appears to be much older than I am, but actually is not. But Amazon apparently is going to launch an Android console for $300. And I'm not sure what... I looked on their jobs. One of the stories, they said they're hiring a lot of people to write games. And I looked on the link. Not that I'm interested or qualified anymore. I was in the old Pascal, C++ basic assembler days. But they're hiring a lot of people. I mean, a lot. And all kinds of, 3D modeling and animators and C#, C++ coders. They're all in, I guess. I'm surprised. I'm not sure what are they up to, do you think? I don't understand. This has kind of surprised me.
This one, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how true this is. Because there are a lot of people trying to get into the Android gaming console space with a lot of mixed results. Yeah, Amazon's got a really good hook to do it, but the question's going to be, do they have enough of a hook that are really going to get people to buy a $300 device that all it does is play games and, probably shop on Amazon?
Probably. I'd say it's...
Well, in the same way, I say that in the same way that, everyone talks about how, you buy a Google device and all it's good for is searching the web and showing you ads. And that's obviously not true. I could easily see that Amazon's game console would not necessarily do that any more than, I was about to say any more than a Kindle does, but I guess Kindle does offer that, doesn't it? Anyway, I don't know what their play is here. I think game consoles are rapidly on their way out. And if Amazon is trying to get into this market, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't see it.
I think the only way that they can enter the market is if they have exclusive content. Right?
Even then,
because it works for Amazon Prime. If you want to watch House of Cards, there's one way to do it. Is that Amazon or is that Netflix? It's Netflix.
That's Netflix.
Okay, so
I was about to say I
yeah.
see that advertisement all the time on Netflix.
Right. Oh, by the way, House of Cards fans, they just they signed up to do season 3, so rejoice.
So yeah, maybe, but the problem is it needs to be really, really good, compelling content, and
that's easier said than done.
It's easier said than done, particularly in the gaming market. You need to get gamers excited about it, and these are gamers that are jaded and are forking out a lot more money to get their Xbox or their PS4.
Apps are like restaurants. For every McDonald's you invent, there's a million duds that go out of business. And it's like trying to create, Alan, let's create a viral video. You know how many people are trying to do that and how few make it.
Yeah. I mean, we got to remember, the guys that made Angry Birds, that wasn't their first app. They had done a lot of apps before then that failed.
But you only need one Angry Birds, and
you only need one to succeed.
Right.
Established game companies are falling left and right. Nintendo, which had been doing tremendously well for years, is faltering with its latest Wii products. It's a tough industry, and it's they've got to present something that is compelling, particularly in light of tablets, because right now gaming is you've got two choices. You're either doing ultra high-end gaming stuff, and for that you're using a PS4 or an Xbox, or you're doing tablet games. There's no middle ground anymore. There really isn't.
There's still exclusive titles, right? Like
not as much anymore.
I mean,
there are.
Like you can only play it on the X. Like I got the PlayStation 2 to play Final Fantasy X. And that's really the only game I ever played on the PlayStation 2.
Yeah, there are, but honestly, the impression I get from the people who are far more into gaming than I am is that you don't worry too much about the exclusive games anymore, because there's a very similar game coming out for the other platform too, if it's not the identical one.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm sure there are people who care about the exclusive games, but it's not as big a deal as it used to be. And where it is a big deal, it's a much, much smaller market now.
And I would guess that based on Amazon's history, this will probably be a very good value proposition for the money. If you're interested in whatever exclusive content or what have you, because they typically sell these things at cost because they want to make the money from the
an Android-based $300 console device. Yeah, we used to call that the Nexus Q.
There's a new Chrome box coming out.
There is a new Chrome box coming out. We'll be talking about that Friday too, I bet.
Okay, so next up, why Android? I don't want to take too long on this topic about why they take too long. But it's just, I really want to just get your take on it and kind of just refer people to the article, because if you have, I have like my Samsung Note 2, and you've got your Google Nexus or something. I don't know, one of the earliest flip phone prototypes or something. And I get on my Nexus 7, which we both have. We get the new version very quickly, within days, usually. And then this thing will, 6 months later, I'll get the previous version or something on my Note 2, and then only get every other version. Now, it's not a huge deal now because most of these are incremental updates. It wasn't like you and Nate, and we've all agreed that Ice Cream Sandwich was the big jump for Android, and that put them in the same ballpark with iOS. And that the things have been neat, and some have been bigger than others along the way. But like if it's 4.4.2 to 4.4.3, it's not like, oh my God, I can't do anything with this shitty version. It's kind of incremental, I think. So it's not a huge deal. But why does it take so long?
Carriers are idiots.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, basically carriers need, everything needs to be tested to within an inch of, the carriers being happy about it. Carriers need to stick their thumb in it. They need to, do crap with it. It basically boils down to they need to deal with the carrier. And if it wasn't for the carrier, then there would be a lot less than they need to do.
On iPhones, do they put their own crapware? Like the Sprint Zone?
They don't.
I'm sorry. Is it? Yeah, on iPhones. So they don't have to deal with that?
No, generally they don't. Apple's got enough clout that the carriers are begging Apple for permission to put the phone on their network.
And paying
And as condition of that, Apple says, okay, but you're not crapping up our pristine operating system.
Okay, it must be nice on the other side of the fence in that respect.
This is why people keep saying that Google should buy T-Mobile. That's not going to happen, but that's why people keep saying it.
I would rather they buy it. I'd love to see them buy it. I mean, it'd be exciting to see. I like that there's 4. And we'll talk about that in a minute. I think it's on our list.
Yes.
So we have some new numbers out, and I'll show them up here. This is the time of year when we always get new numbers.
Yeah, basically, we cover this every month. That the latest stats are out for just how much each version of Android's operating system has hit the Play Store. Or let me see how they're actually quoting it these days. Yes, it's from the Play Store. So we get to see how they're doing. The good news is that, let's see, KitKat has gone up by 0.4%. It's gained a minor market share. Froyo, the oldest version that they still report on, has not changed one bit. It's still hanging in there at 1.3%.
Who are those people, these Froyo possessors?
The Froyo possessors are largely people with phones like this piece of junk. This is this is why I still hate Samsung. This is the Samsung Insight. It was a marvelously badly produced piece of garbage which could not even get out of its way fast enough to answer the phone. When the phone rang, it rang once and then hung up because it couldn't tell me that the phone rang. Anyway, these are people basically who, some of them bought their phones not too long ago and has seen no real reason to upgrade or to move on.
These have to be like prepaid lower-end phones, right?
Yeah, these are not just prepaid lower-end phones. These are prepaid lower-end phones that people bought 3 years ago.
And these numbers are U.S., right? Or is this worldwide?
These are worldwide, but they're only people who are hitting the Play Store. So these are official phones. These are not ones that are made by a Chinese knockoff that don't have access to the Play Store.
Or any Amazon devices.
Or any Amazon product.
Because
correct.
really, Amazon isn't running any of these things. They're running their fork.
Yeah, but their fork is close enough. Other news, gingerbread dropped by a small amount. Ice cream sandwich dropped by a small amount. Jelly bean 4.2 grew by a small amount, and so did 4.3. So
Jelly Bean's doing very well, though.
Jelly Bean continues to do very well, which is no surprise, considering that that's the one that everyone is now developing to. KitKat grew by 0.4%. That's pretty modest, and once again, I think continues to point out that, and we'll cover this again in a moment, that Nexus devices really are not a significant part of, they're not a significant factor. And for that matter, apparently neither is Moto. The Moto X and Moto G have been moving over to KitKat, and they don't seem to be making a significant dent here.
It shows you that still that model of, a 99-cent phone or free phone with a 2-year deal or $100 or whatever it is still very attractive to consumers. They want that. And as much as we can rail about how,
we say that, I don't think it's necessarily really attractive. I think it's really the only thing that people are still offering. Google, a lot of people have realized that Google is selling phones because, that's the marvelous Google marketing effort.
Yeah. Maybe they'll have a barge at every port selling phones.
Well, it still misses out on, the rest of the country.
There's 2 or 3. So I'm surprised. Why is gingerbread still holding at 20% and ice cream sandwich is down to 16? I don't know where they peaked. Were there just a whole bunch of gingerbread phones?
Gingerbread phone. The real kicker is gingerbread phones are actually still being manufactured.
Really?
Really. One of the reasons why KitKat was designed the way it was to encourage it with its low memory footprint. Even though they then pissed all over the people in the Galaxy Nexus who had that exact same low memory footprint. Yes, I'm still bitter about that. Can't imagine why I'd still be bitter about that. But one of the reasons why they created KitKat to have a low memory footprint is because no phone since Gingerbread really could support 512 efficiently. Gingerbread was the last one that really supported it well, that supported those low memory profiles well. So anyone who was making a low memory phone was really forced to use Gingerbread still, instead of moving up to a more modern thing.
And to give credit where credit was due, I had a Gingerbread phone, and it was nothing like KitKat or Jelly Bean, but it was the best. I mean, it was a great first smartphone experience. It was a pretty solid OS.
We have to remember, Gingerbread, when they came out with Gingerbread, they knew it was going to be a couple of years before they were able to release the successor to it. Honeycomb was not designed for phones, and it took a lot of their resources to make Honeycomb. So they were focusing on the tablet then. They made sure that Gingerbread was as rock solid as they could make it, because they knew that this was going to happen. They knew it would be several years before the real successor to Gingerbread was completely out, and now they've done that with KitKat.
Okay. So they kind of maybe held off on some innovative features for Gingerbread just to get it out and make sure it was rock solid.
Yeah. Gingerbread was meant to be a solid release as the last release in the 2X line.
Okay. So you could still have it's a lot. In other words, with KitKat, you can come out with a low-end emerging market phone and have KitKat on it if you're developing it now. Whereas that wasn't the case with Ice Cream Sandwich, and
you couldn't do it. You could barely do it with Ice Cream Sandwich, not really, but barely. And you almost certainly couldn't do it with Jelly Bean. Jelly Bean, although it sped things up, it introduced a lot of performance improvements. Just wasn't good enough for a lot of lower end phones.
Okay, all right, there you have it. The new numbers are out. Jelly Bean's doing very well, and hopefully KitKat will in the near term. I'm cautiously optimistic. Okay, so this is I guess we'll begin just in the order here. This is our discussion segment where we're going to discuss Samsung. We learned about a week ago that Samsung is a couple things. One, they're going to turn back. They're going to try to get to more of a native experience, a pure Android experience, if you will. And they're going to roll back some of their tweaks and their homegrown apps. And this is interesting because I have like I said, I have a Note 2, and I don't ever. I'll sometimes check the Amazon App Store just to see if they have a cool app, or if it's some unauthorized app like MiFi or something that the Play Store can't get me or sell me on my Sprint phone. Then I'll use it. But generally, I go to the Play Store. I don't use the Samsung store. Or their app mark. I don't know if it's a store. What do they call it? Their place you can get Samsung exclusive apps. It's kind of, it's not a good experience. I don't like that when they update a Samsung app, it just sort of, there's no information, what's new. You know, it's just like click OK. I don't know if there's permissions necessarily because it's a Samsung app. So they're going to back down on that. So what's the deal there? To begin our discussion of Samsung and then Motorola.
Well, I mean, the deal is that Google is kind of getting tired of Samsung creating, what's the best way to put it? I don't know, ugly. They're basically trying to take Android and make it not look like Android. So that when people then go try to use other Android products after using a Samsung, they're confused and annoyed. So it's trying to rein in the UI. That said, you know, Samsung has made some decent UI improvements. So hopefully there's some two-way cross-pollination going here, that they're agreeing on trying to make Android look better together instead of trying to come up with different ways to make Android look better.
If you think, I mean, I think their motivation wasn't to screw with Android. Their motivation was to create what they thought would be a superior Android experience on their devices to get people to buy a Samsung device. They basically won. I mean, if you buy an Android phone, most consumers are buying a Samsung phone. So,
and that's certainly what those numbers we just looked at tell us. Yes.
And the bottom line is they're not really making any money. Nobody's going to not buy a Samsung phone if it had pure Android on it, or maybe a limited number of Samsung UI changes and apps and stuff. Nobody's buying the Samsung phone because of TouchWiz. Nobody's buying it because of the Samsung App Store.
No, but they are buying it. You know, Samsung can make a compelling argument that things like their notification center looks better and works better than a stock Android. Now, you may agree or disagree with that, but you know, they can show the notification center and it looks better in some ways. You know, it certainly looks more colorful.
I like certain things, like the way their menus, correct me if I'm wrong, but like if I'm on my Nexus 7, if I'm in Chrome, there's no option to close all tabs. I have to click XXXX to, you know, as you build up 17 tabs. I don't think I can do that on my Nexus 7 tablet. Or at least
I don't remember, to be honest.
But I can on my Note 2. So there's some different things. You kind of have an extra menu option versus pure Android. So some of these things are improvements, I think. And of course,
some of them are. And like I said, what I hope this means is that there's two-way pollination going on here. That it's not that, you know, Google is going to be dictating the UI. It's that both sides will be working together to come up with a better UI.
Now, the other thing that they announced is a patent sharing agreement where they're going to, I don't think it involves all Google patents and all Samsung patents, but maybe. I don't think so, but I don't know. So they're kind of playing nice on that, which that's not surprising because Samsung is a huge partner with Android, and I'd say by far they're the leading Android phone manufacturer, right? I don't think anybody comes close.
Nokia used to. Not sure that's still true.
Certainly in the rich countries, they're the leader.
Here's the... Actually, you know, you say it doesn't include all patents. It would be interesting if it did include all patents. Because I really, really, really want to see a Nexus refrigerator. And you know Samsung's got patents on that sort of thing.
Well, I'm sure Samsung's not going to come out with a knockoff of glass, for example. Of course, technically, those patents
they've threatened to do so.
I mean, they're not going to be able to use the Google actual patented things. You know, there are limits. I guess they're talking about smartphone-related patents.
I don't know. It'll be I have not seen anything detailing which patents they're cross-licensing. But it's interesting.
So on the heels of that, we learn that Google sold Motorola. And I've seen it cast in a number of ways. Like they lost a fortune, but they've retained the patents. And what they said was, the news broke that they were selling it to Lenovo, who have done a great job. They bought the ThinkPad from IBM, and they've done a good job putting that product out. It's a rock solid, good industrial laptop, and they're no joke. Lenovo's a great company, and Motorola does put out good hardware. They have a long history. This does not include, like, I have a police radio in my car. That's a Motorola. That's a separate division?
That's Motorola. That's not Motorola Mobility.
Okay, so that's the traditional.
Right. That was never owned by Google.
Okay, so, and I think that's still profitable because even though it's a niche market, they can charge whatever the hell they want to charge because municipalities have
that's totally that has got nothing to do with this conversation,
so
and never did.
So the phones they've sold, and why don't you characterize how you would? Why did they sell it? This wasn't like a big loss because they've got the patents. Also, a lot of this was stock in Lenovo, and if they do well, then that stock may go up. So, but they did take a financial. They sold it for a lot less than they purchased it, but they sold the set-top division first for $2-something billion, then they sold this for $3 billion or something, and they paid $12.5 billion. But they've kept the patents.
But they've kept most of the patents. Apparently, not all of the patents.
I assume there's an agreement where Lenovo can use the patents, but Google can too, right? Is that how it works? Or they're licensing them to Lenovo?
As part of the agreement, there is a long-term license agreement to Lenovo for the patents. That's correct. I'm actually still kind of mixed on exactly how I feel about this, to be honest.
Their heart was never in it, right?
Well, I think Google's heart was in it.
But why were they working with other manufacturers to come out with Nexus phones?
Well, they had
tablets?
to. They had to because they didn't want to lose. They didn't want all of those phones to go to Microsoft. They didn't want all those manufacturers to go to Microsoft. They wanted to keep them in the Android camp. Not only did they want to keep them in the Android camp, they wanted to keep them in the Play Store camp, which was even more important to Google.
Is my analogy to PepsiCo fair here?
For once, your analogy to PepsiCo is fair here, and I told you had 30 seconds to make your analogy, so go.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Okay, my analogy is this. PepsiCo owned 3 restaurant chains, Taco Bell, KFC, and, help me out, Pizza Hut. So the actual PepsiCo was bigger than the Coca-Cola company because they own these 3 restaurant chains. And, of course, all 3 restaurants sold Pepsi. I assume they still do, I'm not sure. But it turned out that they were losing opportunities to stock Pepsi in other restaurant chains because they were reluctant to stock Pepsi because that was helping their restaurant competition.
Okay, your time's up, Dan.
So they spun it off into what's now Yum Brands, and that's similar to this, I think. Or at least that's one of the reasons, because they don't want to upset other they don't want to compete directly with their partners.
Right, and I think that was a big part of it, is that their partners saw Motorola as a threat. And, I think to some extent that was mollified by the fact that when 4.4 rolled out, it didn't roll out immediately on a Moto phone. In fact, and Motorola's first product under Google, I don't even think released with 4.3. It released with 4.2, which was behind the times then. So I think that mollified them somewhat, but honestly, at the end of the day, I think they were really worried about what Google was going to do long term with Motorola, and that was threaten them. And I think this kind of reassures them in some ways. And I think it's a good, I think it is good in a lot of ways. What confuses me the most about it is Google is still working on a hardware division. With the purchase of Nest, it's clear that they've got some really smart people in there. And one of the important takeaways is that Google essentially took the advanced hardware division out of Motorola, and they're keeping it. So there's a bunch of people and a bunch of technologies and a bunch of researchers that are staying with Google, all of whom know how to make really, really good cell phones and really, really advanced cell phone-like devices. Google's got a long-term strategy here. And I think what they're basically saying is consumer hardware is not their long-term strategy. But Lenovo is dedicated to consumer hardware. That's what they're really, really good at. So it essentially, hopefully, puts Motorola back in play as a real cell phone manufacturer, because it really wasn't doing that before. But yeah, my big question is what's going to happen with the advanced product group? What's going to happen when they start working with the guys from Nest?
Can you tell us what the advanced product group is? What they
The advanced product group is essentially the group inside Motorola that were told to create moonshots. They were the Google X group inside Motorola itself. They were essentially given the charter to come up with what cell phones are going to be like in 2 years and in 5 years, and they were given metric buttloads of money to figure it out. So
I'm excited about. I mean, I think it's if I worked at Motorola, I think it's exciting to get a consumer hardware focused company with money,
right. I
backing
think
you instead of being sort of yet another division of Google.
The big problem, though, I think, with the Motorola spinoff in this way to Lenovo is Lenovo are not innovators. The company, Lenovo as a company is not exactly known for coming out with cutting edge, brand new, totally innovative technology. They've essentially refined the ThinkPad over and over and over since they bought it. But they've never done anything revolutionary with it.
They're a good Asian manufacturer in the classic sense. They bought the ThinkPad and they've kept it. It's still popular among a segment. Still very well built. I just saw a review from Walt Mossberg on the new ThinkPad, and he has some questions about the new design, but he still says it's rock solid hardware.
It's rock solid hardware, but it's nothing exciting. You're not going to see anything revolutionary and earth-shattering come out of Lenovo. Now, don't get me wrong.
The Bruce Turners don't want exciting. They want it to work. You know what I mean?
But here's the thing, Dan. I make fun of Samsung all the time for producing 50 billion models and throwing them against the wall and seeing which ones stick. You're never going to see that from Lenovo because they're going to look at what Samsung did and what Apple did, and 3 years later they're going to produce the same thing. You're going to see that consistently from Lenovo. You are never going to see a Lenovo model do what Apple did with the 5S. Simply because that's just not how they think. You're not going to see Lenovo come out with a model that has a standard screen on one side and a Paperwhite screen or e-ink screen on the other side.
Also, Samsung's a much bigger company, and they've got the Samsung's phone division. I don't know what percentage of their revenue is. It's not like Apple, where
but Dan,
the iPhone would be a huge company just if they spun it off in itself.
But even if you look at the Moto X, the Moto X has a dedicated chip to do voice processing. It's got a dedicated chip to be listening all the time in low power mode. When they made that, they did some fairly innovative stuff there. You'll never see that with Lenovo. You're just not going to. That's not how Lenovo thinks. That's not how Lenovo works.
When they bought the ThinkPad, did they buy the division and the people, or did they just buy the rights to produce the ThinkPad? Because in this case, they're buying a company.
They bought the division. And I don't know how many people actually went with it, but I imagine it wasn't much since they essentially moved everything to China. That's going to be different here. I assume that part of the reason why they bought Motorola was to get their hands on the U.S. factory as well. Lenovo now has a factory in the U.S., which they opened a few years ago. The Motorola factory is brand new and practically unused. So I'm sure they like that. Yes, they got Motorola researchers, but I don't imagine you're going to see revolutionary stuff coming from it.
Let's advance this. The next topic on the same storyline is an opinion from John Wasik from Forbes, who says that there are 5 reasons why Google dumped Motorola. He uses the word dumped. I'm not sure that that's accurate. He says they didn't dropped Motorola because they didn't want to be in the hardware business. It just didn't want to be General Electric. They wanted to stay on top of the food chain in a much bigger ecosystem, and Motorola's not a major player anymore. I don't think this takes into account all the pros.
You know, you know, the third sentence I already disagree with. It just didn't want to become General Electric. It didn't want to become General Electric. GE was the top company in the U.S. for how many years? 50? Some absurd number like that?
It was okay when Jack Welch left.
You know, General Electric was everything to everybody. And to be honest, yes, that's what Google wants to be.
And tell us their history. Tell us how General Electric started. Thomas Edison.
No. Well, they started by competing against Thomas Edison.
I thought Edison was on the board and that his company became GE, and then they threw him out because he was better at inventing light bulbs and running a light bulb factory.
No, it was worse than that. General Electric were the proponents behind alternating current. And Edison was the major proponent behind direct current. And General Electric won that battle, but in order to... Edison still had a number of patents that they needed, so they essentially bought Thomas Edison out. And I don't know if they put him on the board. They may have, but they bought him out basically to get his patents.
I know that was the big Tesla versus Edison battle. Tesla was for AC, and
Tesla was for AC, but Tesla wasn't involved in the in this war basically.
And for folks who are not Allen-esque geeks, the difference was DC, of course, is like what is in your car from your car battery, and then AC. The advantage of alternating current: one, it's safer; two, it travels longer distances more efficiently.
Alternating current isn't safer.
It isn't safer.
More dangerous.
It is? I thought
yes.
DC was.
No, this was actually how Thomas Edison, in some ways, lost. He basically was making the argument that alternating current was dangerous, and he made the absurd notion, or he pointed out that you could kill people by electrocuting with them, and he promised to do that. And that is how New York got the first electric chair, was because Thomas Edison won the contract to make them a more efficient way to kill inmates, and he used electric current, used alternating current. And that didn't really convince anybody because, you know, they wanted a better way to kill inmates.
Well, we'll end that story on a happy note.
Basically, the difference between alternating current and direct current, and why alternating current won ultimately, is that it meant that you could centralize electricity production at long distances from where it needed to be used. If it wasn't for alternating current, if direct current was what was used, New York City, for example, would have needed a coal-fired, at the time, power generating plant every 4 blocks or something like that, which was about the distance that direct current could travel efficiently. And people very quickly realized that was just totally inefficient. Alternating current, as offered by Westinghouse, was much more efficient in that sense, and General Electric was grew up to create that.
Okay. Well, I've gotten a history lesson. I'm waiting for Rich Had to. He must be watching the creation debate.
So let's get on with this.
All right. So our last discussion topic is this is a great head. It's the headline of the week, talking about the potential of a Sprint takeover, or Sprint merger. Really, they're owned by SoftBank, which is an Asian company, right?
I think so, yeah.
And there's a move to merge them with T-Mobile. And the headline here is epic. The Obama administration is on T-Mobile's porch with a shotgun, suggesting that they're not at all eager to allow this merger. And frankly, I don't like the idea of it. I would love, before we went live, you suggested that it'd be neat if Google purchased T-Mobile, but it doesn't look like they're interested in doing that, or at least we haven't.
That was after I went live, but that's okay.
But here's the thing, though. I called.
You know, I'm wrong. You're right. Thomas Edison did help found General Electric.
Could you say the other part again?
That you're right.
And you're the other thing. What?
That I
Oh,
was wrong.
yeah. That's why I use the phrase that Edison was better at inventing light bulbs and running a light bulb factory because he was disorganized. For every these guys, not to compare myself with Edison, but I'm ADHD, and most of your great inventors are. You know, for every light bulb they invent, for
Yeah, but
every
you're getting off topic. So let's get
yeah,
back to T-Mobile.
they have 50,000 unfinished projects for every one that they do. So anyway, T-Mobile is considering, and Sprint wants to merge with T-Mobile or buy T-Mobile or whatever, and T-Mobile's open to it. But I got to tell you, I called Sprint. I'll do my 30-second story. I called Sprint about something. I forget what it was, and they said, by the way, we have a new plan that's exactly like your old plan, but it's $80 instead of $100, or I think it was like $35 less a month. And I said, wow, I didn't know about this. They said, oh, it was buried in the fine print in your bill. And they said it was a direct response to what T-Mobile's offering. So I'm seeing competition, and there's not much competition. And the cost, the profit before depreciation, whatever it's called, you know, the D, whatever the initials are, for these mobile carriers is like 50%. So they're making big money. There's not a lot of competition there. And in the food sector, you know, if you compare McDonald's, Wendy's, they're making low margins. In retail, they're making low margins because there's true competition. But in these cases, there really isn't. There's still
Okay, your 30 seconds are up.
Can you imagine Walmart saying, if you want to buy anything here, you have to agree to sign, you know, for 2 years only here? I mean, that's absurd.
Yeah, I can believe that.
So I'm sure if they could, you know, it'd be great. You know, if you want to watch this program, you have to agree to not watch anything else for 2 years. But wouldn't that be neat? So what do you think? I don't think it's a good idea. I would love to see if T-Mobile wants to get purchased by somebody, like when SoftBank bought Sprint. You still have 4 distinct entities. I'd like to see more, but it's very expensive to build these networks out, and there's only so much spectrum they can buy to build the towers, and et cetera, et cetera. And often, it's not really Sprint. It's marketed as Sprint. Like here locally, it's Shentel, Shenandoah Telephone Company, which owns the frequency. They paid the auction price, got the cell spectrum early on. And so if you have Sprint in Front Royal, Virginia, Bentonville, Virginia, where I live, it's actually Shentel, but it's marketed as Sprint. So they have deals in place. But I'm not at all interested in going from 4 barely competitive companies, although I'm seeing some competitive nature. I'm seeing one of these guys get swallowed up by the other one. There's not enough competition here. What do you think?
I think a T-Mobile Sprint merger is just bizarre on so many faces. The two companies are so dissimilar in so many ways. They're a really bad fit. Whichever company ends up being the dominant one, all of the other one's customers will not switch to it. They'll, you know, ditch it and go to either AT&T or Verizon. This is a lose-lose scenario.
Well, we saw this in the past with Nextel. They became Sprint Nextel, and now it's just Sprint. And Nextel had the push-to-talk thing. The Nextel was very popular with construction workers and for that walkie-talkie feature, and that's gone now.
Yep, it's gone, and just about everybody who used a Nextel phone did not stay with Sprint. When essentially once their phones were made obsolete, they said, hey, if I've got to get a new phone, there's no way in hell I'm going to stay with these guys. They left.
And so now Sprint wants to buy another carrier to get some customers back.
Yeah, basically.
And you fear that would result in another, you know.
And T-Mobile needs something to boost it up. It's been doing really well with a lot of, with its efforts, but it remains in perennial 3rd place.
Why is Sprint doing so poorly? Because they have a very attractive plan. It's the only unlimited data option, and they guarantee that for life, but they don't guarantee an unmetered unlimited. In other words,
because their phones are, they're the only ones using ancient technology. Their phones reflect it. They're using, I don't think they've got a high-speed internet option, do they?
They have, they call it 4G LTE. I have no idea what the actual speeds are compared to.
Yeah,
when I'm on it, it means I'm in town, which means it sucks because it's congested because they only put the 4G where there's a lot of people, right? Because that makes more economic sense. And
Yeah,
then everyone's using it, and it sucks. And I don't have. I mean, who has like a Verizon, AT&T, and Sprint phone? You can do the same test in multiple places, right?
there
So
are people who do for some bizarre reason.
hopefully the viewers can weigh in if you have experience in this, if you've switched from one to the other, and you can offer
And
input.
if anybody's actually viewing.
Well, this will be after, but they're all getting upset about. I know what Sarika's watching right now. Definitely watching the Bill Nye thing, and the other guy. So there we have it. But I do love that headline. The Obama administration is on T-Mobile's porch with a shotgun. That just says it all. And of course, there's that epic picture of President Obama firing a shotgun. Okay, so our recommended apps of the week. Alan, what is your recommended app?
My recommended app of the week has been talked about all over the place. Everyone is talking about the latest game. Yes, that is Flappy Bird. And as is my usual practice, I am not recommending this app because it sucks. This has got to be one of the most annoying games I have ever been privileged to play.
It looks like it's got at least 8 or 9 colors, maybe 16.
It is, I mean, on one hand, I like it because it's kind of clever. You are, as this kind of implies, it's got exactly one thing that you do. You touch the screen. When you touch the screen, this little bird that you see here flaps its wings and it goes up a little. And then it starts to sink. So this is what happens when your little Flappy Bird sinks so far and crashes into a pipe or crashes into the ground. And that's the game. So basically your objective is to navigate through these pipes. So we start out with 0 points. We get past 1 pipe. By flapping past it, we get 1 point. And so on until you crash into something. That's the entire game. Now, I'll admit...
And it looks ghetto.
No, it actually looks pretty... I mean, it looks halfway decent.
It's totally Mario Brothers looking.
It's nothing fancy, but it's, decent. It's simple. I like the simplicity of it. I can honestly teach you how to play it in less than 15 seconds. And in order to play it will take you far, far longer than that because you're going to want to keep trying. But honestly, I gave up after about 5 minutes because it was just too damn annoying to actually play. So that's my non-recommended app of the week, Flappy Bird.
Flappy Bird. Okay. So there we go. Flappy Bird.
Flappy Bird. Don't bother.
Okay. So I have 2 things I want to just 2 apps. The first I'm going to talk about is Flipboard because we have a Flipboard magazine. It's
actually, because you haven't talked about Flipboard in at least a week.
Right. Exactly. So we have they're updating basically what Flipboard. I'll go to our magazine here. The Flipboard magazine is kind of a neat way to quickly add topics to a magazine, and then what I do, like when I'm coming up with a topic, like this is our topic list here, and usually throughout the week, what I do is I just flip various articles I find, and I can do it here if I'm on any article. Let's say I wanted to flip, this article here. I could just click flip it and add it to the Google Plus Week or our Android Week magazine with one click, our Android Week, and then add, and it's done, right? So that's really easy. And then later on any of my mobile devices or on the web now, I can pull up the Flipboard magazine, and I like the way it works. The way it works is it's in chronological order. So I just need to go here. So I see 2 weeks ago, okay, so that was the last show. And then I see 6 days ago. So then when I want to add topics, all I do is I click, it brings it up, and then I control click, and then I can copy the headline and then use my little, I paste this headline into the doc, and then I click here to my little bit.ly short link thing. I say save the bit mark, then copy it, and then I go back to my doc and I paste it in there, right? And that's how I generate these. So it's really good. But the point of this is that they are changing it so you can have like a table of contents. They're making it more of a magazine-like. So you'll be able to have a table of contents, and it won't just be in chronological order. So if you're not using Flipboard, check it out. It's a free app, and it's great. I love it. And there's all kinds of interesting magazines. Like there's one on streaming video, and I found a lot of really interesting articles there that I had missed. Please check out our magazine. It's got what's it got here? 179 readers. So that's pretty good. That's pretty cool. So there you go. Now, my second app of the week is something I just heard about. I think it was in beta for a while, and now it's gone public. And this is the EverythingMe Launcher. One of the big things about Android and iOS is contextuality or context. What's the word, Alan?
Yeah, whatever.
Either way, context. So one of the neat things, like apps that will, realize where you are and give you relevant information based on your GPS location. So this is a launcher sort of like this. The basic thing is, it's a launcher, and it knows, like, it'll learn in the morning. It'll suggest news apps and maybe weather. And then when you're at work, it'll realize what apps you typically use at work, and will display those by default. And then when you're in bed, maybe it'll display, if you typically would read a few chapters in your Kindle book, with your Kindle app, it might suggest that. So here in the morning, there's the weather, and there's your calendar, your CNN, Facebook, Gmail, Flipboard, etc. And then it's got some organizational things, and then, like I said, it knows that if you're traveling in a city, it might suggest, and I wasn't or I guess I am screen sharing. It suggests when you go home, it might suggest recipes for dinner if you're into that. So it's kind of it's pretty configurable. So check it out. It's free in the Play Store. It's the EverythingMe Launcher. It's one word, EverythingMe, and then Launcher. And that is my app that I recommend you check out this week. So there we have it. Coming up on Friday on Google. Oh, we have some comments here. Whoa.
We have comments. That means we have viewers.
Yeah. So I don't know what happened. Oh, the die thing must be over. So Cadeas couldn't make it. He didn't get the invite. I shared it directly with him, and I mentioned him in the post. I think he was just watching Bill Nye. And then Miles France says, in Denver, when he was on Sprint, I got about 20,000 down, the worst speeds. Or 20K down. Yeah, 20K down. John Brown says, I just dumped Sprint to go to Verizon. Can't believe I waited so long. Coverage much better. And my new Moto X battery lasts more than a day. I used to carry 3 of those fat 3,500 milliamp per hour batteries for my Samsung SPHD 700 to get through the day. His comments are very thorough, very detailed. And the old phones, Android OS was never updated. Moto X within a month. So there you go. Now, Sprint's cheaper, but I guess you get what you pay for. And that's the deal there. So, okay, coming up on Friday, I'll check the comments again before we conclude. Coming up on Friday is we'll discuss the new Microsoft CEO. And I guess you got a little early. Are we allowed to say this? You not name names, but you talked to some folks who work there, and they're pretty enthusiastic, right?
Everyone I've talked to has been very excited about the new CEO. It's going to be interesting to see, and we'll be talking about it on Friday.
Should we read anything? What's interesting, that the notion of having the former CEO and the founding CEO on the board still, quote unquote, looking over the shoulder or whatever. I think that's actually very interesting. The founding CEO won't be on the board. Oh, that's right. He's not chairman. I think he's still on the board.
I thought he was giving up his board position completely.
Maybe, because I know he's selling his stock. He's still the richest guy in the world again, right?
Well,
but I think he's selling his stock for charity, so we'll talk about that.
We'll be talking about it on Friday. There's a lot more than just the new CEO going on here. A lot of interesting things going on.
I hope they get rid of that stupid Scroogled thing. I hope that's the first thing to go.
We'll see.
One question, we'll discuss this more Friday, as you said, but one question, Alan, do you think the impact of having two people, the immediate former CEO and Bill Gates still around, is less of an intimidation issue with the new CEO because he's homegrown, whereas it might have been more of a intimidation issue if they had brought someone outside in?
I don't know. Maybe you should ask Larry Page and Eric Schmidt that question.
Because I think they're both joining us Friday.
Yes.
Again, be good to have them back. It's been a while. I think Larry's bringing the sushi, and Vic's going to show up with the wine, and Eric will, bring an airplane or something. I'm lying. They're not going to be here. But they always invited, of course. And then also we'll be discussing the Google Barge got an eviction notice. The mysterious Google Barge has to leave San Francisco, the Treasure Island port. And you had an interesting post about gigabit fiber in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And
yeah, we've been talking about gigabit fiber for a while now, on and off. And last week we had an incredibly long discussion about it. But this time we've got some more evidence. Chattanooga, Tennessee apparently has had gigabit fiber from municipally offered for about 4 years. Gives some interesting numbers. So we'll be talking about that on Friday as well.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts?
Just remind people what we're talking about when we say on Friday.
On Friday. On Friday, we have our program Google Plus Week, which is at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Friday, Google Plus Week, for Friday at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. This program, I apologize, I was sick last night, and Alan graciously agreed to join me tonight so we could do this, and hopefully I won't be sick again. But this program, our Android Week, is Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific. Monday, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. You can watch on YouTube Live or Google Plus Week. So thank you very much, Alan, for toughing this out. And to our viewers, 7 strong. We get more after this show. Shame we don't get more comments. But to everyone watching now or listening later or watching later, we appreciate it. Thank you very much for taking the time, and have a wonderful Android Week.